Today, if one were to ask, when did the preparation for the revolution really begin? The most accurate answer would be from 1961, because the three of us who formed the nucleus of the revolutionary group had met in that year. Although we are not there and then planned a revolution, we had seen eye to eye and we knew that we had a common cause. It was as if the seed was sown at that time and only needed time to germinate, grow, and bear fruit. But these meetings were between Ifajuna and me on the one hand, and between Nzogu and me on the other. This pattern remained almost the same throughout. When you read this book, which I read, you go with the idea that it was three people that actually planned this stuff, but that's not actually what happened. That's what he thought. And how do I know this? There's a document called the Special Branch Report of the Events of 15th January 1966. And I'm going to read something about that before I read to you what I found there that contradicts what Adewale Ademoyega, not contradicts in the sense of that he's lying, or just contradicts into the point where you understand the fact that he was very naive. So let's start by reading The Nigerian Civil War. This book is by a man called John de St. John. It says here, the full truth about the details of the first coup may never be known, since all the principal conspirators are dead, killed in the July counter-coup or in the Civil War. But sufficient evidence is available to eliminate some of its central mysteries. The best account is the Federal Police Report, on which I have based much of the narrative. This document, prepared by the Nigerian Special Branch, took 3 months to finish. It was ready in April 1966 and was written after 200 officers and men, including all the ringleaders involved in the coup, had been exhaustively interrogated. The body of the report is, I am convinced, a thoroughly honest, painstaking, and politically untainted piece of work. The astonishing detail and the formal police language substantiate both its authenticity and veracity. Then it says here, the concept of a coup in Nigeria was not new. Please stay with me. We've started the session now. So it says, the concept of a coup in Nigeria was not new. In the constitutional crisis of December 1964, several lieutenant colonels, mainly Igbos and including Ojukwu, had talked of military intervention, but nothing came out of it, and the army, true to its British traditions, had kept out of politics. You know, the reason I slowed down is because, remember the book, the interview granted by David Ejo, he had mentioned Ojukwu organizing a coup. The reason I like to have 1, 2, 3 sources for a particular claim is that it helps to see things from different perspectives. David Ejo mentioned how Ojukwu and Bassi reached out to Victor Banjo, himself, David Ejo, and Yakubu Gowon to organize a coup in 1964. And he also mentioned that most of the people that were behind that coup were Igbos. And then he talked about how he eventually went to report the incident to General Foster, and he was the one who told them not to, carry out that kind of thing. Now you are reading it from the special, well, we're going to get to the special branch report later, but you're reading it from this book that indeed Ojukwu had planned to have a coup in 64. And then funny thing, please just stay with me. You're going to have a fantastic time today. Oh, beautiful girl. Oh, daragon. It's going to be beautiful, so you're going to enjoy it. So he says, the concept of a coup in Nigeria was not new. In the constitutional crisis of December 1964, several lieutenant colonels, mainly Igbos and including Ojukwu, had talked of military intervention, but nothing had come of it, and the army, true to its British traditions, had kept out of politics. However, as the situation deteriorated, some of the younger officers began to plot seriously, and it seems probable that the inner circle of the January group had its genesis in August 1965, even before the disastrous or catalytic elections in the western region are taking place. In other words, I heard Bengbule saying that the reason for the coup was the crisis in western Nigeria late in 1965. Apparently, that crisis happened after they already started planning the coup. And you find that also in Adewale Ademoyega's book, they've been talking about the coup for a long time. And they really sat down to plan it gone in August of 65. Whatever happened in Western region happened in the last quarter of the year. In other words, it was not the events of Ibadan that made them plan the coup. It was just a catalyst, so to speak, for what they were going to do. Why is this important? Because I've read many books, including the one by Max Leon. I think it wasn't maybe Oil and Politics or Nigeria Soldiers of Fortune. Either of those two. There's another one. I read a number of his books. But he kept saying, it was something happened in Ibadan, in Yorùbá land. It was the Western region crisis that caused it. And I actually believed it, by the way. I'll say this. There's a difference between the cause and the catalyst. Something could speed something up. It doesn't mean that you did it because of that thing. In other words, you were planning to do it on your own. 64, you were going to do it. 65, you were going to do it. And the things that happened after the coup also shows us exactly what the mind was. And I will say it just like David Edgeworth said it, at the heart of it. Now, this, of course, is not like, oh, did they talk to everybody in our ethnic group before they did it for us? Did they do it on our behalf? I know we have all of that argument, and if you have the argument, God bless you with your argument. But here's the truth. That stuff was carried out in order to further a cause that was very, very ethnic. And when we say ethnic or tribal, we're talking about a particular one. And this is not just because the majority of the people that were organizing that stuff were from that particular place. Somebody asked a question, somebody had typed something, and somebody asked a question. Maybe I should just quickly answer it. I know I don't want to get distracted, but it's important to answer it. May not just go fly like that, because people read this comment section now live on YouTube and on Facebook. So, and they will also go back to it. So let me say this. Awolowo was sentenced to prison in 1963. From 1963 to 1966, August, he was in Calabar prison. It's important to make it very clear that what you hear now is the same thing that their parents said in 1967. Whenever the East has a problem owning up to something, they would look for someone else to blame. It's a pattern that in recorded history we can show you from the 1940s. There has not been 1 year since then that they haven't done it. The idea of responsibility, the idea of owning up and saying, you know what, I messed up here, let's address it and move on, that is not in their culture. And I am not even joking. It is strange. Whenever I see somebody from the East own up to something, I find it strange, because it's not a cultural reality. It's always someone else's fault. How could Awo, who had been in prison since 1963, plan a coup? One, how come every single person who planned that coup did not even mention him as a beneficiary of the coup until the government of the Eastern region began to push that propaganda in 1967, July, after they declared Biafra? If you're from the East, I'll tell you something. I feel for you. You are disadvantaged in terms of the elders, the leaders, and the history you have. I sincerely feel for you, because there is no way you're going to continue like this and expect grace or growth. And as I'm talking, another clown just came in. It's a lie, by the way, just to make it very clear. Our Lord did not plan anything like that. And the sons and brothers that planned it, we're going to read their names today. You know why somebody says, oh, why are you coming out with these kind of things now? I'm like, now. They've been in the public space for more than 50 years. Literally. Well, I'm bringing them out, but they've been in the public space. And why are we bringing them out? Because of people like this. Iroini. And I used to really feel bad for you guys. I still feel bad, I can't lie. I found what I'm looking for. I still feel bad for you because there's no way you're going to have this kind of culture and grow. You can't grow. But I hope you heal if it's at all possible. If not, I hope you cry so that your children will see your tears and choose to live better. So I'm doing this for your children. Indirectly. So back to this. The concept of a coup in Nigeria was not new. In the constitutional crisis of December 1964, several lieutenant colonels, mainly Igbos and including Ojukwu, had talked of military intervention, but nothing had come out of it. And the army, true to its British traditions, had kept out of politics. However, as the situation deteriorated, some of the younger officers began to plot seriously, and it seems probable that the inner circle of the January group had its genesis in August 1965, even before the disastrous catalytic elections in the western region had taken place. Contrary to popular belief and Nzogu's own claim, listen please, contrary to popular belief and Nzogu's own claim, it appears that the original caucus did not include him. 200 officers and men were questioned for a period of 3 months before the report I'm going to read out. I'm going to read that report before we get deep into this book. I'm going to read it's called the Special Branch Report of 1966. And when they researched, they discovered that Nzogu, who thought he was Kinikon, just like Ademoyega as well, they were not the primary planners of the coup. They thought they were. I saw that thing today. I had to pause. I stood up for a second, just walked away, just to try and process it. So this guy, Ademoyega and Nzogu, in their minds, they were planning a coup. They were. Remember what we read now? He said, if anyone were to ask you when did the preparation for the revolution really begin, the most accurate answer would be from 1961, because the three of us who formed the nucleus of the revolutionary group had met in that year. That's what he was thinking. By the time they interviewed the rest of the group, they discovered exactly that the people who thought they were planning did not plan anything. They were brought into it. The people who really planned it before they invited them. I'm going to get into it today. It says here, contrary to popular belief and Nzogu's own claim, and also Adewale Ademoyega's own claim, it appears that the original caucus did not include him or him. Majors Ifajuna, the high jumper, and Okafor, commander of the Federal Guard, were the principal plotters. And they brought Nzogu, dubbed by one writer the Brutus of the coup, they brought him in later, since they needed an efficient and strongly motivated man to direct operations in the north. By the end of October 1965, there were 7 officers in the conspiracy. 5 majors and a captain were Igbos, and the remaining major was Yorùbá. In other words, Ifajuna, I always knew Ifajuna was one of the core guys. But this is where it gets crazy. Ifajuna Okafor, mark that name Okafor. Remember Okafor, we were talking about him yesterday, we were talking about law, Okafor's law. Okafor was the same person who pulled out because himself and Oji were saying that nothing must happen to Ironsi. He, Okafor, was one of the original coup plotters, according to the report that came out much later. In other words, I've said it several times that the primary person who organized the coup was Ifajuna. Everybody already knows that. The primary coup plotter was Ifajuna, because when you read the book by Bengbuli, Nigerian 5 Majors, he mentioned that the coordinator in the north was Nzogu, but the coordinator, as in coordinator general, so to speak, was Ifajuna. So I always knew that. But you see, reading Adewale Ademoyega's book, you left with the idea that it was himself, Adewale Ademoyega, Nzogu, whom he had known since 61, and Ifajuna, who were the 3 major people. And he said that in his own book as well. However, in reality, they brought him in later. The people and listen, this is why I always say it's an Igbo coup. It was an Igbo coup. Thank you, Jay. I listened to Ojuku's interview as well. Ojuku also said that the Fajina was the leader. That's true. I listened to that interview. That was when he was saying that there should be no need for another coup, another war. The point here is this. For many Yoruba, this is a lesson to learn. Well, one lesson to learn. If you're Yoruba and you are doing all this, let's say Nigeria, we are obedient. You don't know when the meeting began. We're going to read it in the branch report. You will see how it actually happened. You don't have an idea. You are revolutionary like Adewale Ademoyega, like Nzogu. You just want to change the world. You just want to change things. You just want to have a better government, even come with ideology. Look at the book as a manifesto. How they're going to do the military and they're going to work with the people, all those fantastic ideas. That's what you are about. Your heart is clean. You want to change Nigeria. You want to turn the world around. Thank you very much for your beautiful ideas. The people you are working with, you thought they are the one who reached out to Ifajina and said the three of us should do something. Meanwhile, Ifajina and two other people from his ethnic group planned the stuff and called you along, and Nzogu as well. You are just a willing tool. You're not the originator of the idea. And I remember something when I was writing my notes this morning. I talk about the movie every time. It's called Inception. Please, if you have not watched that movie, please watch it. It's a movie by Chris Nolan. It's one of the most, I think it's the most important movie as far as human mind is concerned. Inception. So an example, for instance, is they'll make you sleep. They'll go into your gym and plant an idea there. You wake up and you're like, I have an idea. That idea, they place it inside you. To make you crazy, they did one. The real huge one was when they went into a gym within a gym within a gym. So you go into the gym of a person. In that gym, they'll make that person sleep. He will now dream again. In the second level, they'll now make the person sleep again. Then the third level, they'll now drop an idea. They'll now wake the person up to the first dream. Then in that level of the dream, they'll wake him up to another dream and then another dream until the person wakes up. When the person wakes up, they begin to think in a particular way. When they start thinking, an idea will come to them. That idea, they'll say, oh, I thought about something. Meanwhile, that idea was planted deep in their subconscious. That's what happened with this guy. By the way, that's also what happened with propaganda in the Southeast. Every single person in the Southeast was conditioned to believe certain things. It's so deeply planted in the subconsciousness. If I say it's a lie, you will tell me I'm a hater. It has formed part of your identity. You think it's original to you. You think it's your thought. It is not your thought. It is something that they planted it deep. It's so deep that you have to go 3 levels down in your dream to be able to reach it. And if you remember, if you watch that film, I love that film. If you watch that film, you remember that there was a reason Leonardo DiCaprio's wife in that movie, there's a reason she committed suicide. Why? He made her sleep and then made her dream in her sleep until like another dream, like 2-3 steps in the level, he planted the idea. And what was the idea? The idea was that they needed to live the real life and live in their dreams. Don't worry, it might be complicated. I'm going somewhere. And so when they woke up in real life, that idea was still in her head. She was looking for a way to die so that she could go to the dreamland, which is going to be the quote unquote the new reality for them. Even when he tried to change her mind, she could not change her mind. And the reason she couldn't change her mind is because she had thought deeply about it, and it was the only thing she had to do. That was the only escape. Meanwhile, that escape that she was looking at was something that was planted by her own husband, who made that dream 2 levels or 3 levels into her like subconsciousness. What am I trying to say? When you see a person saying we had 70 million people die in the Southeast during the war, and you know that the entire population of Igbo people in the world at the time was 7 million people. He doesn't care that he's wrong. That idea was planted deep into his subconsciousness. That's formed part of the person's identity. The same way Yoruba people have to learn to greet, respect, prostrate as a boy, kneel down as a girl. Those cultural values, the same thing that respect means to you is what victimization means to some people. It has been wired deep into their subconsciousness. They think that To even come against it, you are against them. Meanwhile, it's a lie. It's not even real. How would 70 million, 21 million, 7 million, how would 21 million people die in a population of 7 million? But nobody thinks about that. It's just like, oh, yeah, they died. Hey, yeah, sorry, Nigerian people are bad. All these Nigerians are very terrible people. Yeah, me too. Then you have a trauma bonding party, PT party. Everybody's throwing ashes in the air, acting like they've lost everything. The truth of the matter is that people can plant ideas in your mind. Adewale Ademoyega, even in 1981, we're going to see some things in this book today. Do you know that even during the war, Adewale Ademoyega knew that Ojukwu was the wrong person to work with, and he still worked with him. He knew that Madiebo was a tribalist, and he still worked with him. And he wrote all those things in his book. In 1981, he still believed in 81. That's 15 years after the coup, that he was one of the original planners of the coup. Meanwhile, the guys who planned it, they made it so that it appeared. Do you know that even up until recently, a lot of us believe that it was Nzogu that planned the coup, but Nzogu was not even one of the original planners. They planted that thing in our minds. They said it over and over again, and that's how propaganda works. You take a complex idea, you simplify it, you make it black and white, and then you repeat it over and over and over while you are blaming others for what you have done. You say it over and over again. Before you know it, all of us have the same thing. We say it's history. You can even fight. Do you know where I read it? My father told me. Your father didn't know anything. My father told me. Do you know my father experienced the war? Your father was suffering for what the person who told him what was happening did to him. In other words, Ojukwu was denying your father food. Ojukwu was telling your father was Awo. Your father believes Ojukwu. So it didn't matter. It doesn't matter that your father was there. Your father believed what he was told. That's the sad part. And like I said, every time I look at people from the Southeast, for the most part, I see you guys as victims of propaganda. But I also think that some people here, some people there also don't want to change. But for the most part, you are victims of propaganda. You just believe it, and it's a lie. We're going to go into details of what happened during the war later on. But let's get back to the book. It says Majors Ifajuna, the high jumper, and Okafor, commander of the Federal Guard, were the principal plotters, and they brought Nzogu, dubbed by one writer the Brutus of the coup. And I'm wondering, why would they call him the Brutus of the coup? What did Nzogu do that made them call him Brutus? We'll get into it. Oh boy, I'm excited about this. See, let me tell you the funny thing. It is true that Nzogu moved from the north and went to Lagos and surrendered. That's why they call him Brutus. But do you know that he was the only one that was successful in amongst all of them? Oh boy. See. Excuse me. Ifajuna, Okafor, Oji, they did not plan that coup. They didn't plan that coup to revolutionize Nigeria. They planned that coup to install Ironsi. All the idea of an Igbo man stop one thing. We'll read it from. I'm going to read Achefe's book today. I'll read it. In fact, let's go to Achefe's book for a second. We're coming back. In fact, let's finish this one, then we'll go to Achefe's book. It says here. They called him in. They brought him in. Nzogu. They brought him in because they needed an efficient and strongly motivated man to direct operations in the north. By the end of October 1965, there were 7 officers in the conspiracy. 5 majors and a captain were Igbos, and the remaining major was a Yoruba. It was already 5 majors, but there were actually 7 people. There were 2 captains. Those 2 captains were Igbo. 4 of the 5 majors were Igbo. Only 1 was Yoruba. What's the percentage of 1 over 7 times 100? 7 in 100 will be what? 7 in 10 is 1. 7 in 30 is 4. 14.2%. That's the percentage of the Yoruba person in that coup. But you know, like I always say, what makes it an Igbo coup is not because the planners were Igbo or majorly Igbo. There are not 18 planners. There are 7. And of those 7, there were 5 majors. And of those 7, there was one Yoruba man. There were not 1,000 planners. Oh, we have Yoruba. We have a list of Yoruba names. Who were they? People like Nwobosi, for instance, who unalived Akintola in Ibadan, wasn't even part of the original Kini. They brought him in much later. 14.2, yeah, 14.28%. The Yoruba person it was just one person. Every other person you see in there was brought in. I think I should repeat that thing because it's important. I know I said it yesterday, but it's important to do it again. So please humor me, or oblige me, so to speak. Let's get back into how those people got involved. I'm going to come back to this stuff, and I'm also going to go back to Achebe's book eventually. There's something I'm looking for. Follow Adewale. This was the question posed to Follow Adewale. It was on the allegation that you were among the people that planned that coup, that you were detained by the federal government. We want you to assess the situation then that really prompted the military to strike. And here's his answer. I was not one of the master planners of the coup. It will interest you to know that by 11:30 on the night of January 14th, 1966, I had no clue about the coup. No clue whatsoever. So why did they link you? Precisely, I was friendly with Emmanuel Ifajuna, who was a brigade general, and then after they had planned and done everything possible, as the saying goes, some of the people who agreed to what they had agreed decided not to take part. It was a matter of getting anybody who could help, and by virtue of my position, I had a telephone in my house, which was the same thing that happened to most people there. The original planners started telephoning, "Where are you? I want to see you." It was an emergency period. I was second in command to the transport brigade in Apapa, and we were on 24-hour alert. It didn't come as a surprise, so that is what happened. They drove to my house. Okay, so like they would say something like this: something is happening in Lugbomoso, blah blah blah. Can you help out? We did get instructions 24 hours. So it didn't come as a surprise. So that is what happened. They drove to my house at about 25 minutes to 12 and asked me to come to Ifajuna's house. I got there and I saw a lot of officers sitting down, and they had even finished what they were talking about. And they said, "You stay and I will brief you." And he also mentioned what happened to Ganiyu Adeleke, that he has spoken to them like, "Listen, I have to go and talk to my family about what I'm about to do," because they didn't even know there was a coup. They just knew that they had to, do something in the middle of the night. And then the officer said to one of the officers told another one that follow him. He might be the first casualty of the coup. And when he heard that, there was no need to even move and do anything else. I'm going to read something else to you from the book by Bengbule. This one is about a gentleman called Lieutenant Gibson Anyafulu. This is from Nigerian 5 Majors by Bengbule. He says here, even more unfortunately, the junior officers who had gone along with the plotters had not been properly briefed, which was for fear that the secret might be leaked to the authorities. The net result was that those junior officers who would otherwise have proved immensely useful were made to tag along blindly, with no clue as to what precisely the whole military operation was all about. They didn't know. No clue at all, just like what Oga said the other time. No clue. One of such junior officers was Lieutenant Gibson Anyafulu of the Signals, Apapa. According to him, he did not even know that the coup was in progress, although he was actively, if innocently, involved in its prosecution. On the very night of the operation, at about 100 hours, he was woken up by the BM of the 2nd Brigade, Major Emma Ifajuna, and told to get dressed immediately because there had been an emergency, and hence the need for an internal security operation. Incidentally, the military push had coincided with Lieutenant Anyafulu's 6th week in the Nigerian army. In fact, he had not been amply acquainted with the mechanics of weapon handling as a whole when Ifajuna thrust a weapon into his hands. Later on, he was taken by Major Adewale Ademoyega to the P&T headquarters in the Lagos Island and left there with instructions to proceed to paralyze all the vital items of the communication equipment inside the building. He set to work at once without bothering to find out why. Indeed, without asking any questions at all. Then, having completed the assignment, he did nothing else but to wait for a superior officer to return. He waited long enough to become irritable. Finally, as dawn was breaking, he caught a bus back to Apapa. It was not until listen to this. It was not until he was arrested after his arrival at the officers' mess Apapa that he realized that he had just taken part in a botched up military coup. Many of the people whose names are going all over the internet right now, they don't even know. They did not plan it. They didn't even execute it consciously, for the most part. Excuse me. They were just, following the command. So that's that about those people. Now, back to the people who actually did organize the coup. Like we said, it is true that Adewale Ademoyega was one of the 7, but it's actually not true that what he said, that he was one of the original 3, was what he said that was one of the original 3. That's not true. In actual fact, he was invited much later. He just thought it was his idea. It was not his idea. Now let's go back to the book by John de St. John. The book is called The Nigerian Civil War. I'm just going to read something to you. I'll tie it to something in Nigerian 5 Majors. Then we'll go to the document I really want to read, Special Branch Report of 1966.